The first knock wasn't a knock at all. It was a blow, wood cracking against wood, a fist or a boot slamming into the front door hard enough to rattle the framed photos in the hallway. Elena Brooks woke up with her heart already sprinting. Before she could sit up, there was another udar, heavier this time, then shouting. Loud, sharp, male voices stacked on top of each other like they were racing to be heard. Police. Open the door. Her husband wasn't home. That landed in her chest like a dropped plate. Marcus worked night shifts when he could grab them, double paying overtime that helped keep the lights steady and their son's college fund alive. He'd left 3 hours earlier, kissed her forehead, and joked about the burnt toast. Elena swung her legs out of bed and padded down the hallway in socked feet, palms up in front of her like that alone might calm whatever storm waited on the other side. Coming, she called. I'm coming. The door flew inward before her hand touched the lock. 2 officers poured inside, dark shapes edged with streetlight. One grabbed her arm, hard. The other scanned the living room with a flashlight like he'd lost something and expected to find it hiding under the couch. Ma'am, get on the ground, the first officer barked. What? Why? Elena said, confusion tangling her words. What's going on? She barely finished the sentence before the grip on her arm tightened and twisted. Pain streaked up her shoulder. Her knees buckled more from surprise than force, but once she was off balance, the moment took on momentum of its own. Stop resisting. I'm not. Her cheek hit the floor. The world sharpened into fragments, the scratchy rug against her skin, the sour smell of adrenaline, the clock on the wall ticking loud enough to sound accusatory. Somewhere a radio squawked. Somewhere glass shattered. Elena screamed, not the kind that carried words, but the kind that came from a place that didn't have language anymore. 3 hours earlier, Marcus Brooks had pulled into the precinct lot with coffee cooling between his knees and a tired pride humming under his skin. He loved the quiet before a shift. Loved the hum of the building late at night, the feeling that the city was breathing slower. He hung his jacket in his locker, revealing the badge clipped neatly to his belt, a silver disc worn smooth at the edges. 20 years on the job had taught him how fragile calm could be. It had also taught him how easy it was to forget the people behind the calls. Another long one, the desk sergeant asked. Marcus nodded. Same old. If he'd known. If he'd felt the hair on his arms rise for no reason the way it sometimes did. If the coffee had spilled, or the engine stalled, or anything at all, had slowed him down. Elena lay on her side now, one arm pinned behind her back, breath coming in desperate, shallow pulls. The officer on her back was heavier than he looked. His knee dug into her ribs like it had a personal grudge. I live here, she gasped. Please, my husband. Quiet. Something struck her temple. Not full force, but enough stars burst behind her eyes. She tasted blood. In the chaos, she caught pieces of words. Caller said screaming. Possible domestic. Don't know who else is inside. Domestic. The word echoed louder than the shouting. She wanted to laugh at how wrong it was, how painfully ironic. She wanted to cry. She wanted Marcus. Her hand brushed the wall as she struggled, fingers grazing something cool and flat. The frame rattled with the movement. Stop moving. The flashlight beam followed her hand and climbed the wall. It stopped. The room changed, not abruptly, but subtly, like the air pressure shifting before a storm hits. The second officer stared, then stared, harder. On the wall hung a modest frame, slightly crooked because Marcus never hammered nails straight. Inside it, a neatly pressed uniform, folded with care, badge pinned over the left breast. The nameplate was clear. Brooks, M. The officer's voice dropped. Hey. The weight on Elena's back hesitated. Hey, the second officer said again, quieter. You see that? Silence stretched. Heavy. Uncomfortable. The knee lifted. Elena rolled onto her back, coughing, dragging air into scorched lungs. She watched their faces while they watched the wall, watched something recalibrate behind their eyes. You said, your husband. One asked. She nodded, tears sliding into her hair. He's a cop. Neither man moved. Marcus was reviewing paperwork when his phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Then again, the third time enough to slice through his focus. Unknown number. He answered anyway. This is Officer Brooks. The pause on the other end was off, too long, too stiff. Officer Brooks, this is dispatch. There's been an incident at your residence. The room tipped. What kind of incident? Another pause. Sir, the voice said carefully, you might want to come home. Marcus didn't remember the drive. Elena sat on the couch with a blanket draped around her shoulders that she hadn't asked for. Her hands shook so bad she tucked them between her thighs. I told you, she said, voice hoarse. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just tired. I told you. One officer kept his eyes on the floor. The other hovered by the doorway like he'd forgotten what doors were for. The ambulance lights painted the living room blue and red, over and over, like an accusation that wouldn't settle. When Marcus finally burst through the door, the blanket slipped from Elena's shoulders. She stood on instinct. He froze. Not because of the officers. Because of her face. One eye swelling shut. Split lip. Bruises blooming already like dark fingerprints. For a second, just one, Marcus was no cop at all. No badge. No training. Just a husband staring at the woman he loved, wondering how the world had done this while he wasn't looking. Elena, he breathed. She crossed the distance and pressed her forehead into his chest. I'm here, she whispered, like she was convincing herself. The room felt too small for what wanted to happen next. Marcus looked at the officers then. Really looked. They looked back. No one spoke. The report took hours. The night stretched thin and ugly, full of apologies that tripped over themselves and words like procedure and mistake that landed flat on the floor. Elena went with the paramedics. Marcus followed. Neither of them slept. In the days that followed, casseroles showed up from neighbors who didn't ask questions. Cards came from people who didn't know what to say. Silence came from places that had always been loud. Elena's bruises faded slower than anyone liked. One afternoon, weeks later, Marcus found her standing in the kitchen staring at nothing, fingers resting on the counter like it might drift away. I almost didn't open the door, she said suddenly. He looked up from the coffee pot. What? That night, she said. Something told me not to. He leaned against the counter beside her. Didn't interrupt. But then I thought about them, she went on. About how scared people get. About how everyone thinks someone else is the threat. She turned to face him, eyes clearer now, steadier. And I didn't want to be another locked door. Marcus swallowed. The badge on the wall still hung crooked. Neither of them had fixed it. Outside, a siren passed and faded into the distance, sound thinning until it was just another part of the city's breathing. Inside, Elena reached for Marcus's hand. He held on.